Good morning, everyone. We are the Higala Group. Our report is all about moral virtue and methods. I am Kristen Zay Salagoste. As stated by Aristotle, developing a practical wisdom involves learning from experiences. Yes, this is very true because, for example, myself, I am facing my challenge today and I fail. But it's okay because that teach me a lesson. That lesson will make me strong and I would take that lesson to cherish my whole life and maybe someday somebody will facing a challenge that is no longer different to my situation. I can assure that I can give advice what is the right thing to do. Knowledge is not inherent to a person. Knowing the right thing to do when one is confronted by a choice is not easy. In attaining practical wisdom, she may initially make mistakes on how reason is applied to a particular moral choice or action. But through these mistakes, she will be able to sustain a practical wisdom to help Easter another's ability to more morally right choices and actions. In other words, she is able to mature and grow in her capacity of knowing what to do and living a morally upright life. Life is so beautiful because, for example, in school, we study a lesson to make our test perfect. But in life, it gives us tests to teach us lesson. This is why when it comes to life choices, one can seek the advice of elders in the community, those who gain rich life experience and practical wisdom, because they would be able to assist someone moral deliberation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marin Bletay Sumuso from Bested One Major in Filipino Batch 1. Based on Aristotle, a morally virtuous person is concerned with achieving her appropriate action in a manner that is neither excessive nor deficient. In other words, virtue is the middle or the intermediary point in between extremes. One has to function in a state that her personality manifests the right amount of feelings, passions, and ability for a particular act. In generally, feelings and passions are neutral, which means that in themselves, they are neither morally right nor wrong. When one shows a feelings of anger, we cannot immediately construe it as morally wrong act. But the rightness or wrongness of feelings, passions, and abilities lies in the degree of their application in a given situation. It is right to get angry at an offensive remark, but it is not right to get angry at everyone just because you were offended by someone. One can be excessive in the manner by which she manifests these feelings, passions, and abilities. But one can be deficient in the way she expresses this. For example, she may be outraged at the attacks of terrorists, and yet may be insensitive because she is not directly affected. So, in a morally virtuous person targets the methods. For Aristotle, the task of targeting the men is always difficult because every situation is different from one another. Thus, the methods constantly moving depending on the circumstance where she is in. The means not the same for all individuals. As pointed out by Aristotle, The mean is simply an arithmetical proportion. So Mills-Sutz determines whether the act applied is not excessive or deficient. Likewise, an individual cannot be good at doing something haphazardly, but reason demands a continuous habituation of skill to perfect an act. Targeting the middle entails being immersed in moral circumstances, understanding experience, and eventually developing the knowledge of identifying the proper way or the mean to address the particular situation. In relation to the news article, the government and its agencies responsible for protecting and assisting the young on their personal development should act in view of the middle measure. The government could have dismissed the issue or could have banned the television shows portraying violence. But such extremes censure the citizens' freedom of expressions and artistic independence, which can result in other issues. Unwisely, the government acts on the side of the middle measure by going through a series of consultations to address the issue of television violence, implementing the rules guidelines for viewing safety, dedicating 15% of television airtime for child-friendly shows, and enforcing a television violence rating code that took into account the sensibilities of children. So, it seems that the government acts in a manner that is not deficient and excessive. So, Aristotle's discussions was ultimately leads to defining what exactly moral virtue is. So, it is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean, that is, the mean relative to us, this being determined by a rational principle, and by that principle by which the man of practical wisdom would determine it. So a virtuous person is someone who performs the distinctive activity of being a human. Aristotle defines moral virtue as a disposition to behave the right manner and as a mean between extremes of deficiency and excessive, which are vices. So, for Aristotle, moral virtue is the only practical road to effective action. What the person of good character loves with the right desire, and thinks of as an end, right reason must be first perceived as beautiful. Hence, the virtuous person sees truly and judges rightly. Since beautiful things appear as they truly are only to a person of good character. It is only in the middle ground between habits of acting and principles of action that the soul can allow right desire and right reason to make their appearance as the direct and natural response of a free human being to the sight of the beautiful. That's all, and thank you.
Good morning everyone. My name is Lizel A. Oga, BS Ed 1, Batch 1, major in Filipino. This is my report, the rational faculty that serves as a guide for the proper experience and therefore develop the capacity to know the proper way of carrying out her feelings, passions, and actions. Aristotle clarifies that not all feelings, passions, and actions have a middle point. When one murders someone, there is nothing excessive or deficient in the act. Murder is still, for example, you kill that person, your perspective in yourself, you are still good, but the other people perspective, you are a killer. But according to the Aristotle, even though you make bad things, you're still but not every actions nor every passions admits of a man. For some have names that already imply badness, nor goodness or badness with regards to such thing depend on committing adultery with the right woman at the right time at the right way, but simply to do any of them is go to wrong. In this study mentioned wherein children are beginning to consider as a violence as a way to solve problems. So how hard your problems, you still make a ways on how to solve it. Developing a practical wisdom involves learning from experience. Knowledge is not inherent to a person right thing to do. When one is confronted by a choice is not easy. Practical wisdom, she may initially makes mistake on how reason is applied to particular moral choice or making morally right choices and actions. What does it identify as the proper and right thing to do? Refers to well-founded standard of right and wrong that prescribe what human ought to do. This replies might be typical of your own. So my explanation, good or bad, my perspective is still so based on my understanding, according to Aristotle, even though how many case you make in your life, you're still a good person according to Aristotle. So that's all. Thank you.
In continuing the report of my groups, in performing tasks or functions will a person must understand the structure of the soul where a reasoning will operate. According to Aristotle, the human soul is divided into irrational and rational faculties. The irrational part of the soul, the natural processes of the soul that are responsible for physical growth, that is for the vegetative aspect, but in appetitive aspect are contrary the reason but can be acted out of obeying the dictates of reason. While the rational part of the soul is the intellectual aspect concerned with the act of knowing, one can learn from experience that therefore can again sufficient understand on what to do. Aristotle points that are knowing the good and being able to determine in appropriate action in given situation do not make her do the good. Automatically, the moral aspect is the rational faculty concerned itself with the act of doing good. Aristotle sees the development of one's character as the constant interaction between the faculties. The rational part of the soul attaining happens in arrive at when one performs or functions.
Good day everyone, my name is Ricky Jimawan, BSED1, major in Filipino, batch 1. My report is all about to carry out the task of performing here the functional will the person has to understand the structures of the soul where her reason will operate. Aristotle showed that human soul is divided into the irrational and rational faculties. The vegetative aspects of human irrational part of soul cannot be directed by reason because it does the natural process of the soul that are responsible for the physical growth. With the rational faculty of soul, the part where excellence can be attained, part of the rational faculty of the soul is the intellectual aspect concerned with the act of knowing. Aristotle pointed out that having intellectual excellence does not make one into morally good persons. Knowing the good and being able to determine the appropriate actions in given situations do not make her do good. Theoretically practical wisdom, such as the still and the realm of the intellectual aspect of the soul. Aristotle sees and developments of one's characters as the constant interactions between the faculties of the rational part of the soul. Practical wisdom is the deemed as a necessary ingredient as the guiding the moral faculty and doing the appropriate actions. Practical wisdom identifies and right actions and the moral faculty. A faculty aptly excuse F. That's all. Thank you.